Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Automate Your Engineering Process webinar. My name is Carolina, and I work in both marketing and sales here at MicroCAD. And today we will have Jim Dumont presenting. But before we get started, I want to make sure that you all know how to use On24. So in the lower left-hand corner, we have our Q&A box. You can ask a question at any given point throughout the webinar, and we can actually ask some solve questions to it throughout the webinar. So no need, we can actually become more interactive and live as you send them in. And then in the upper right-hand corner, we do have links to our social media accounts. In particular, we do have our YouTube channel in which we put all recordings of our webinars at the end. So that's a great resource in order for you to kind of expand your knowledge there as well. So let's get started and pass this on to Jim.
Hi, thanks, Carolina. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Let me see. I'm not seeing all of the attendees yet. Can you see? Is it afternoon for everyone or not? Let's find out. Let's see. Yeah, my phone right now is on the East Coast. I see Eric, Chris. I don't think we've met before. And Richard is literally just down the street from me. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. Today, we're going to be focused on automation. Let me get back to that screen here. Okay. So I do want to thank you for taking the time and attending our webinar. We're going to focus on some of the tasks and the processes that when I visit customers, talk with customers, these are the things that they're running into every day. And what I'm trying to do is help them and help you automate some of those processes just to eliminate the redundancy, but also maintaining consistency and company standards. A lot of the things that I hear and see is everyone needs to release files. And we're really going to be focused on the releasing of files with like Vault Professional. Most of you are pretty diligent with modifying the iProperties. And if you're using AutoCAD, the block attributes, you want to be able to show if it was reviewed by, the reviewed by date, the approved by, and things like that. And most importantly, the revision. We also see, I see a lot is customers are always creating PDF files. Basically, for every file that gets released, PDF has to be generated, submitted somewhere, a lot of times integrated into their ERP system. A lot of times, if you're using Inventor, we're using hopefully IDW files, not the Inventor DWGs. That's a topic for another conversation at another time, definitely not today, but we will focus on the ability of how do you create AutoCAD drawings from Inventor drawings. And then a lot of times that's necessary if you're working with customers, vendors, suppliers. You're using Inventor, but they don't, so you want to give them a compatible file. Sheet metal, a lot of times you need to create DXF files for sheet metal parts, the flat patterns. Also, what's another big thing is notifying everyone that needs to be notified when a file gets either initially released or updated. Sales, purchasing, quality control, they might need to get ready for some of the updates. It's important that they're aware and notified when anything is new or anything gets modified. The other thing is updating if you have an ERP or MRP system, is getting that information into that system, whether it be a new component, a new part number, or an updated. You know, if you're changing cost, material, anything that has to be pushed back and forth between those systems. Those are things that we can actually discuss today. So we're really going to be focused on Vault Professional because that is really where the heavy lifting is done. Vault can actually manage a file's life cycle. You can see this little graphic right here. And I will preface the rest of my presentation. I am not going to bore you or death by PowerPoint. I only have a few slides, so we'll get through these pretty quickly and then get actually into the live demonstration of these features. But we're looking at the state and the revision. And it's nice that when I'm looking at a list of my files, I can very clearly see what's available to be checked out, to be edited, what revision it's at, what is actually released. When something is released, it's locked. You can't touch it. I'm also seeing these little glyphs over here, which means that these files do not meet the criteria. There's something missing. And I will not be able to release that unless that information is entered and updated appropriately. So there might be a missing description or a title. Whatever we define as a company standard has to be in place. The other thing that's in a lot of times in a drawing is when you're viewing, I want to be able to view the latest file, which is something in Vault that you always do. Whether it be Vault Basic or Vault Professional, you are always looking at the latest. However, sometimes it might be good to look at previous history. So with the Vault Professional and the Vault Workgroup, you can just specify what revision you want to see and get a preview of it at that particular moment. No searching, no comparing files. You'll have everything at your fingertips right here. The other thing is your title blocks. You want to make sure that the revision is properly updated in the title block, whether it be Inventor or AutoCAD. You know, that information needs to be entered and it needs to be done consistently, accurately, so that if Caroline is looking at the system, she knows she's looking at the most up-to-date rev. She doesn't have to worry about making sure she has the latest. If she's in the system, she sees it, and when she's relating the information to a customer or to a vendor, she's able to reference the rev of the file, so they know they're talking about the same document. Revision table is nice information. Some of you do this, some of you don't. Getting that rev history on the drawing automatically is also helpful. The date and the approved by, I like that to be filled in when it actually does get approved, so I don't have to worry about filling it in, checking it into Vault, updating the view, updating the PDF, have everything done for me, just with a normal process of just editing a file and checking it in. The one thing that I see a lot of customers struggle with is just file numbering. I've seen homegrown systems, I've seen Excel spreadsheets, Access databases, 3-ring binder. Most of you are doing some kind of file numbering system. Some of them are intelligent, some of them are sequential, but it's my take on it is the file numbering is, to me, it's almost irrelevant. I don't care if it's sequential, just as long as they're unique, because I'm using other information like title and description when I do my searches to find out exactly what I'm looking at and what I need. So we talk about automation. It doesn't just come from Vault and some of the processes that it can do. We're talking about iLogic. And what I see a lot of times is just a simple drawing creation. I see 2, 3, 4, 10, 12 templates, A size, A horizontal, B size, if it's an assembly, if it's a part file. Everyone has multiple title blocks depending on what they need. Through automation, we can do that with iLogic in a single template file and have everything you need at your fingertips. The other thing that's nice is that one of the problems I found is that you can have a part file and it has a title and description. That information needs to be put into the drawing file as well. Now, you can do the title block, but when you're looking in Vault and you're searching, so let's say Rick over at Herrick, he's looking in Vault, he searches for just IDWs. If he doesn't have the title and description and he's got some kind of a sequential or non-intelligent part number, he has absolutely no idea what he's looking at. He doesn't know if that file pertains to a particular project or not, a particular elevation or not. He's just not sure. We want to get the same information into the drawing as it is in the model. We'll show you how we can do that with iLogic with some very simple automation. So we have what they call these event triggers. I'm going to show you actually how we configure that in a second. And let's get into that. So I'm going to try to do, I have Inventor here. I have a particular file that's up, open on the screen. What I'm looking at right here, I'll just kind of configure this a little bit. Typically, we see Inventor looks like this. When I'm working with Inventor and I'm working with Vault, I like to see my interaction. I'm not a huge fan of clicking over here and clicking on Vault and switching between tabs. Also for my iLogic, I like to see things a little bit more dynamically. So I'll take my Vault palette or browser, depending on what you want to call it. I'll take it out and then I'll put it right at the bottom of the screen. So now it's integrated, so I can see what's going on dynamically. I can see that this file is released, it's locked, and I cannot edit it. I can see the revision J and what category it's assigned to. The other thing I can do is take my iLogic and I can put this on a different screen, dock it on the right-hand side, or even just put it over here as well. Because we're doing a webinar, I only have one monitor to show you. I'll keep it on one screen to make it easy. But what I want to do is be able to take this file, save it as another file, and walk through a process of showing you some of the automation that we just presented and how we actually incorporate that into the system. So I can create a brand new file. And as soon as I save it, I'm going to be presented with my automatic file numbering system. You can have different schemes that are defined. There's no limit to how many schemes. You want to keep them as, as few as possible. If you design them correctly, you don't need that many. I'm going to cancel this. Let's get back to this file right here. It also works if I do a save as. I'll choose this, it's a casting. And in here, I've got a prefix of a CA, cast iron aluminum. I'll make it aluminum. And the 3 digits represents just unique file numbering. So Vault is going to automatically assign a unique file number for this particular file that I'm working on. So file new creation, file save as, I can incorporate this. And this works with AutoCAD as well. So everything I'm showing works exactly the same with AutoCAD. And what I'm going to do here is just take a peek at this, designs, MTC, and I'll create a folder with my initials in it, JRD. And there's my file. So the other thing I'd like to do is I'm pretty diligent about filling in my iProperties, title, description, stock number, things like that. But what I'm not a huge fan of is having to right-click iProperties and navigate all the different tabs. For those of you that are not aware, this is not part of the automation, but this is just built into Inventor. You can always drop this down, and the iProperties is actually built into it. So if you actually look over here, that's actually a button that you can turn on in your quick access toolbar all the time. Now, from here, I can go to my title. I can change it. My project, I can change it. But if there's certain fields that you fill in all the time, why go through tab by tab? We can use iLogic and just create a form that has just the properties that you want. So my title could be my part number, which always matches the file name, my stock number if I need it, and the authority if I want to place that. So you can add as many fields to this as you want. It's really simple. It's iLogic, and it's real easy to do. You really don't need to be a programmer if you've never dabbled in iLogic. This is something that MicroCAD can help you with. I hit this, and it actually updates my iProperties for me. And just to make sure everything looks good, and my description is, let's fill in something a little bit better there. Let's go with a type when I demo. Okay. Now I'm just going to add a couple of little things to this. I'm just going to add some flanges over to here. Change the width. Can't really drag it, but you can change your numbers. So my width will be, let's say, 3 inches. So I'm not going to be full width. And I'll add a couple of hems over here. And so on, just real simple little changes. Now, when I create my drawing file, I will use my MicroCAD. So right now, this is set up for a B size. I'm just going to leave this like this for now. I'll do a simple projected views. If I want to change this, I created some iLogic code, which I'll show you in a second. If I do my iTrigger, this will allow me to very quickly, I have one template file. Now, I did lie to you again because this is a webinar and I demonstrate for a lot of companies. When I do new, I've got standard and standard IDW, but typically I'd only have a one MicroCAD. You're not going to see a D size, a B size, or a C size. I have one. It happens to default to B. I simply just click on C, page 1, and I move my views around, change my scale, and off I go. I want to change it again. I'll do B size. And I can even set it so it moves my views and keep them centered. I didn't get that deep into the automation preparing for today's presentation, but the code is really, really simple. It's just a lot of what-if statements. So if I choose Format A, I have a predefined title block and sheet sizes. It just configures the sheet just as if you were to do it manually and does a zoom extents. And that's all it does. These are just conditions. If I choose A, do this. If I choose B size, do this, and so on. And that's all it is. Simple, simple code. And if you're interested in any of the code I show you today, feel free to reach out to Carolina. We can send you the code so then you can actually start utilizing it and taking advantage of some of the automation. All right, so here's my drawing. I showed you some of the iLogic. Now what I do want to show you is that I'm going to save this. Before I do that, make sure, okay. Okay. Reason why I needed to do that first is I forgot to reset that prior to the webinar. So when I actually hit save and I save my drawing, I'm missing my title, my descriptions. The part number comes in, that's because that's a built-in field, but I'm missing information in here. And if I go to my iProperties, I don't have the title, I don't have the description, and that's something that I want. Now there are ways of doing this. If you are familiar with Inventor, we can actually go to the document settings, and you can actually copy the model properties into the drawing and have them match. That's something that has to be configured, and it has to be done all the time. And if you make any changes, you always have to remember to come back here and update that. What I'm going to propose is that we use some iLogic to do this for us automatically. So I have some code in here, and I set up what they call an external rule. And one of the things it does, you can see I've got a few pieces of code in here. This one right here, drawing property update. All it's going to do, it's been predefined. It's going to take the title from the base view. If it's a part or an assembly, it doesn't matter. It's going to take the title and description and copy it to the same fields for the drawing. So if I run this, everything gets filled in automatically. And if I look at my iProperties, everything is here and everything looks good. This is simple little automation, but it's a big deal because if I go back to my part file, and oh, actually, let's get out of this. Let's go back to my form here. And I add or I modify my information in here. I want to make sure that it automatically updates my drawing. Right now it did not. I would actually have to run the rule. But what I want to do is every time I save this document, I want to run that rule. And that's what we do with what they call event triggers. An event is just something that happens. If I open a document, if I save a document, I want something to happen. So before I save this document, I want that code to run. So I just go to my event triggers, and I'm going to do all drawings. Before save, I'm going to specify that code right there. So before I save, it's going to update, it's going to run that rule, which is going to update the properties, and then it's going to save the document. So I no longer have to think about that. Just by hitting save, everything gets filled in. The iProperties are there. They're all mapped appropriately inside of the vault, and everything just works. All right, so we have that. And now what I'm going to do is I've gone through a lot of that information. I'm going to check this in. Now I'm going to start utilizing Vault. And the one thing I always recommend if you're using Vault Workgroup or Vault Professional is to make sure you shut this off. I do not create visualization when I check the files in. It's a secondary operation and it's done after the fact. Okay, so these files are checked in. They're automatically categorized as engineering. My default revision is A, and my default life cycle is work in progress. Now, I can actually go to Vault, Actually, I'm logged in as the wrong user, but it still works. You can see at the bottom right over here, I'm logged in as Mike. That's in preparation for the change order that I want to show you later on. But right now, these files right here, I'm finished with them. I want to release them. So I can just change their state to be released.
So Jim, this is all looking great, but I'm wondering if anyone, we have a few more people coming in still, and I was wondering if anyone had any questions at this point, any check-ins. We can maybe go over a step again, or any clarification questions. Feel free to use the chat box again. But if not, we can keep going.
Okay, I'll hold off for a little second here and see if anyone wants to post a question.
Maybe we can keep going, and then if I see one come up, I'll read it out to you.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Great.
So I checked the file in, and I'm logged in as Jim into my system. And what I'm trying to do in this webinar is showing you how Vault can work in a multi-user environment. So I have a couple of sessions running, and one of them is logged in as Mike. He's going to be doing something later on. But right now, as you look at it, Mike released that file, but Inventor still thinks I can actually edit that file. The one thing that people always fail to do is if they're not sure what's going on, something's not working quite right, just do a refresh. And it's going to show me that my files that I currently have open are stale. The files involved have been modified, something's changed. And what's changed is the lifecycle changed and now released. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this. And in Vault, I'm going to look at my job queue. So by releasing a file, that put it into the queue to be processed. And that processing is going to be, it's going to create a PDF file. Stick in my job queue here. You can see that it's pending this information. Now the job queue, it's just by changing the state. And do a refresh over here so we can actually see it. So here's the file right there, these two, and you can see that they're released. And if I look at them right now, there's no view, nothing's going on, there's no PDF file. It's because they're waiting to be processed in the job queue. So what it is, a job queue is really just, it's another computer. It could be my computer, it could be Rick's computer, it could be Chris's computer. It's just that you specify what computer is going to be running the job processor. And when the jobs get posted or sent, the job processor will actually execute and create whatever is necessary. So I'll show you what that looks like. I have a separate computer that's running that job processor. It's actually Amazon. It's a cloud server, and this is just sitting here. Just minimize some of this. I was doing some testing for another company. So this is my job processor. And what it does is every 10 minutes, it's going to look at the job queue to see if any jobs need to be run. Now, the last thing I want to do is just sit every 10 minutes and watching the screen. So I'm going to push it along just by doing a manual push. By doing that, it's going to force the job to be run, and it's going to do what's been defined. It's going to synchronize the properties. It's going to make sure the revisions match. It's going to update fields. It's going to create a PDF file. So that completed. Then if I do my refresh in Vault, go to my job queue. Resubmit that. I should have restarted my computer earlier. Okay. I'm going to skip over that one for a second. I'm having a problem with that one. All right. It's going to look like this. It's going to create a PDF file like this right in here. So it's going to automatically do that for you. It's going to create the PDF. It's going to create the visualization file. And if I go back to my folder here, I'm going to restart this. And I'm just going to push this job along again. So I'm just going to go into my job queue, and I'm just going to remove this for a second. Okay, job queue is in here again. Okay. Should have warned you earlier. The last time we did the webinar, I'm not sure if it's the PowerPoint. We had a similar situation. But when I run everything before the presentation, it works great. So it gets us a little stage fright. All right, we'll let that get running there. All right. So we'll let that process in the background, and we'll come back to this to make sure that it did process properly. So what we're getting here, this is the Vault Professional and Vault Workgroup out of the box. When you check a file in, as soon as you change its lifecycle to released, it's actually going to, if I look over here, yeah, it didn't even update the visualization file. Okay, we got to correct that. All right, the visualization file is going to create the PDF and automatically add it to Vault. Again, as I showed you earlier, it's going to do things like this. All these PDFs will get generated. All right, so while we're waiting on that to process in the background, let's get back to the PowerPoint. And before I talk about the change orders, are there any questions that came up, Carolina?
Doesn't look like we have any at the moment, no.
Okay. So right now, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. This is strictly Vault Professional. Vault Workgroup does not have this built into it. There's a change order system that's directly integrated to the Vault. And with that, you actually have the ability to see the whole flow of the change order. There are several tabs that allow you to completely document the change. Over here, I can see the title. I can see a detailed description. Under records, I can see what files are being controlled by this change order. We also have the ability to dynamically add markups in the change order. So you don't need to, let's say, print out a PDF file, truly redline it, scan it, bring it into the system. But if you wanted to, we do have companies that do that. They prefer to do the markups by hand and then add them to the system. The routing are the people that make up the change order as far as who has the ability to create change orders, who has the ability to manage them, edit them, actually execute them, and like say notified. So as I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, Carolina might be in sales or she might be in purchasing. If we make a change to a part that requires, might be a different material, she's got to make sure that the next order gets done correctly. So she would be notified, she'd be listed in here as a notification user so that when a change order gets closed, she automatically gets emailed. She gets emailed the part number, a link to the system so she can see what's going on, and she can identify if she needs to act on anything at all. So let's talk about the change order. Let's go back into here. All right. All right, so let's log in as Mike. So this is Mike over here. At the bottom right shows me who I'm logged in as. And Mike has already started a change order. So this little work list, this is the change orders that Mike is directly connected with, or it requires his attention. If I go to my login, because I'm listed as a change administrator, I'm actually seeing it as well. But Carolina, Rich, Chris, if you guys log into Vault, you would not see anything in your work list because you're not listed in the what they call the routing or the workflow. So go back to Mike, and Mike is going to edit this change order to complete it. I started this just for the sake of time. So the change order number is 11. He put in here a change order title, modify part per custom request, and C markup. This is a file that is actually being changed. Oh, I just noticed that when Mike did this, he only added the drawing file. He did not add the model. So he's going to actually add that. So he's going to search on FR-0008. Here's the IPT file, and he simply just added it. So he can modify this change order at any time. Comments get added automatically as a change order goes through its flow, or you can add a comment. If you need to request information from someone, I can do it right here. I can add a comment, an email, Carolina requesting her for some information, or maybe the customer contact. The files are very similar to the records. The files can actually, you can include things like maybe an email attachment, maybe a PDF, maybe a bitmap or a JPEG, something that a photograph that is going to help document the change order. So you would bring that into the Files tab, and again, you've got one central source of truth for this change order. Every document, every related file is isolated and located in the change order. The routing of the people. I am JRD. I'm the change administrator. Maria is the responsible engineer. That's typically the person who would do the work. And Mike is the change requester and a notification user. This looks good. And so what Mike's going to do is going to go through here to the drawing. There's no view. He's going to update it dynamically right here. All right, so here we go. I can see my revision history is in here. Everything looks good. And this 7.928, that probably should be maybe like 8. Maybe I'll make some changes. That half-inch hole should be 3/4 of an inch. So what I'm going to do here is simply just mark this up. Change 2.75. Okay, that looks good. So he's going to save this markup. It basically is going to create an extraneous file, and it's going to be automatically added to the change order. It's going to add a comment. The markup is added to this change order, so that's going to be commented and recorded as a final piece of information in there. So there's my markup file automatically added. Okay, and here it is right here. All right, so I finished, or Mike finished this change order, and he's going to submit it. The change order is now open. These are previously completed. They're closed. So now I'm going to log back in as me. At that point, I would have received an email, and I also see it in my task list that this change order requires my attention. I click on it. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to validate that it's good, make sure everything is filled in correctly. I have all the information that I need, and I'm looking at the routing, and I know that Maria's on vacation and that this has got to be done right away. I'm actually going to edit this. I'm going to remove Maria from the list, and I'm going to add myself as the engineer. So I will do the work because I know Maria's out. Mike created it. He's the approver. He's the notification user. So at this point, everything looks good. It's right here. Now, because I'm going to do the work, I don't have to submit it. I'm going to force it and just kind of like fast track this. So I'm going to look at this. In order for me to change these files, I got to change the state. Here's the file right there. So I'm going to open it. I'm going to check it out, make the changes, check it back in, and then finish the change order. So the only thing that I've added to this workflow is just the change order part of it. The file was added to a change order just to record the change so that we have that history. I'm going to open up the part file. And let's see, let's check this out. quite the right dimension, but I think you get the idea. Change that, and I'll change this. Actually, I want to change the sketch of that. 0.75. Okay, so that's done. Simple little change. Here's my flat pattern. What I'm not seeing over here is the actual rev. I want to be able to put, like, say, the ECO number that's in there. So what I'm going to do is just run a little command just to update the properties, because I want the next row in. And I've configured the system to only show the latest 3 revs. So A and B were removed, C, D, and E now display. A and B are not gone, they're just gone from this revision. If I look at my previous revision history, they'll be there. And I'm just going to edit this. ECO 11. I don't need to fill this in. That'll get done automatically. Everything looks good here. I'll check this information in. Close my files. Now, what I like is Caroline is looking at the system, right? Or let's say Rick, I'm going to use you, Rick, since you're just down the street from me. Rick's looking involved. He's looking at different folders. How does he quickly know if a file is being controlled by a change order? So when you actually go to a particular folder, this file right here, this little icon right over here lets me know that these files are being managed or controlled by a change order. So graphically, I can see what's going on. I can see that these files are being controlled. The other thing is, let's say we talk about what they call a thin client, skinny client, web-based client, depending on what you want to call it. Vault Professional, this is only for Vault Professional. Let's say that we have sales and purchasing. The last thing we want to do is buy Vault for them. But Carolina needs to see what's going on. She might have gotten an email that a file was just released or a change order that's going on. Or she might be looking at something else. When she looks at the actual thin client, and let me do the refresh over here. She logs into the system, and this requires absolutely no licensing at all. She can see the files, she can see what's going on, but what she can't really tell right now is that file is being controlled by a change order. There is a configuration in here. Okay. Switch back over to here. Make sure I'm in the right system. Okay. All right. So when this change order gets actually saved, she'll actually see it listed in there as actual little checkbox that is being controlled by a change order. Okay, now, where are we? Back to Inventor. I close the file. Here it is here. And if I go to the change order, so I made the change to the files. I checked the files back in. The files are in the open state. The records are right here. They're work in progress. Now, I've just completed this. So what I'm going to do is I want to take the files or this change order and move it from open to approved. And what I'm going to do is simply just submit and force approval. So at this point, Mike is the actual approver. And let's go back to Mike's login. I don't know what I click on to get that sometimes. Okay, so Mike just received an email that that ECO was approved. And what he's going to do is he's going to simply edit this. Mike is the approver. What is going on here? I jumped the gun a little bit. My apologies. Mike could have actually approved it and sent it over. Since it is already approved, I'm going to actually close it. But before I do that, I'm going to change the state of these two files. So they're released, and I'm going to close a change order. It's closed. Work list gets empty because that change order has now been processed, it's completed. And if I look at the job queue, those jobs are pending. Now, the file that I worked on this last time, there's a little bit more going on. What I'm doing is I'm going to start automating this with Power Jobs. Power Jobs is a program that it's actually created by Coolorange. That's the actual company. And they create products just for Vault. And they do all kinds of things, like it can actually update the properties. So even though I've released it, it can actually get into the system and actually fill in information as far as approved by date. It can actually create those sheet metal DXF files like this. So if it's a sheet metal part, it'll create a DXF file automatically. If it's an IPT file or an IAM, it can actually do watermarks on the PDF files. IPTs or IAMs can actually create a 3D PDF with an attached step file. So it just takes the capabilities of Vault and expands it, I don't know, 10 times, 20 times. It's exponential because if you can think it, we can do it. It's just a matter of what do you want Vault to do when you actually release the document? What needs to happen? In this particular case, we want some of these processes to be happening in the background. And let's get back to my job queue. So now this is actually Coolorange running in the background. It's going to synchronize the properties. It's going to create the necessary PDF files. It's going to create the PDFs, the IPTs, the 3D exported PDF files. It just takes the capabilities of Vault and expands it so much more. So now it's creating the DXF file. And that just happens in the background. And the only thing you have to do as a user is just change the life cycle of a file to be released. And then you tell us as a company, you want MicroCAD. We like when we release a document, we want this, this, and this. What conditions have to be met? What has to happen when something gets released? And it's a simple little setup. It just happens in the background and it happens automatically, consistently for every user, for every file that you work with inside of the system. Let's get back to Vault. And let's see here. So it's processing those files right now. We had a similar issue the previous seminar that we did, a webinar that we did, with the files that was being processed by Vault professionals having an issue. So I'm not sure if it's the PowerPoint, but it's consistent. But as soon as I shut everything off, everything works fine. those processed. And so right now you can see the IDW file, and look at my view. I have to actually the view shut off. Here's my PDF file. It's got the watermark built into it. Here's the IPT file, but also, here's also the IPT DXF file that got created. It gets added to Vault. It has a life cycle it's released, and it matches the revision of the file. Here is the IPT. This is the 3D file. So if I do a get of this, and this uses Adobe. Any PDF document viewer can actually view these files. Bring it over here. So here's the 3D PDF that got created. Has the attached step file that's built right into this PDF. And you can specify what template you want to see. So if you customize your own templates, any fields that you have in there, I can see the revision. If I want to add a description and a title, I can do that. So that's being done automatically just by releasing a file. It's going to create all of these necessary components. Now, it also identifies if a sheet metal is, if a part is a sheet metal or not. If it's not a sheet metal, it is not going to create a DXF file. It'll skip over it. It understands the difference between a normal IPT and a sheet metal IPT file. But it creates a PDF. It creates all the necessary documents, and everything gets updated. If you change this from release to WIP, again, it's going to bump the revision. If it goes to F, all these files get updated. But same thing, I have full history. So if I look at this document, I look at my view, and if I go back, actually, let's go to this guy. I can go to all the previous revisions. In this particular case, I deleted a lot of them in preparation for today's seminar. But you're going to see all of the history in here just through the views. And if I look over here, so I'm going to see this one has more accurate history. So I'm going to see Rev D, Rev C, Rev A. So just by using the Vault, I have full revision history. I don't have to be adding suffixes to the file names for underscore Rev A, underscore Rev B, and so on. I simply just change the lifecycle from release to WIP. It's going to bump the rev, change it back to being released. It's going to release it, it's going to lock it, and it's going to create all of the necessary documents. It's going to do that for me automatically. It's going to make sure that my company standards are always met. I can't release it unless my description's filled in, my title's filled in, maybe my stock number, whatever you need. And the other thing, we talk about ERP and MRP systems. If I release a document, it can actually take metadata. It can take that title, description, stock number, and actually write it out to external file. So that can be read by your ERP system, and it can update the necessary records in it appropriately. So we can do all kinds of things like that. It's just based on what do you want the system to do for you. We would work with you to identify where you're struggling with. What do you think some of your redundancies are? Things that have to be done all the time, but it's taken away from your engineering activities. You're doing a lot of record keeping. Try to identify that, and we'll look at how can we help you implement automation. You can do it at very low level. You can do it real easy to start with, and then start adding on to it. The biggest form of automation today is in two pieces. It's usually the iLogic and Inventor, and the Vault Professional with the Power Jobs. So that's what we're looking at for the automation. The last thing I want to show you, but before I do that, are there any questions on any of this right now? I do apologize. I had some hiccups with the software, but if any questions, we could do look at it a little more deeply, depending on what the needs are.
So I know, Jim, that some people sometimes are afraid of making changes to their workflow. You know, they get very comfortable with what they have, and they kind of stop playing around with it. So in a few words, what would you say are like some of the key benefits of implementing some of these processes?
The biggest one, I'm going to answer that based on what my customers tell me. Their confidence is much higher that they're looking at the latest revision all the time. So when they actually, if anyone's looking at the system, looking at their files, they're always going to be looking at the latest documents. In here, I can see the IDW file, I can see the PDF. I can rest assured that everyone that has access to the system has access to the latest revisions. Sales, purchasing, quality, if they need supporting documents, they don't have to disturb engineering. They have access to it either through this thin client, which is free. You have Vault Professional, everyone has access to get the files they need. It reduces the interruptions that engineering has. People have access to the files that they need when they need them. And if something gets revised, they understand it, they see it, and they have access to that previous information. So the biggest thing is accuracy, latest and greatest files and revisions.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And you definitely did show that throughout. So that's always great. Definitely worth making the switch. And even though it might feel daunting at times, in the long run, the downtime that you take and just like learning it, it pays for itself. So definitely worth it. So how long would it take to really kind of pick up on these changes? Like if someone is a basic user, how long would it really take to feel comfortable with it?
Well, you can do it in steps. The first thing you want to look at is, small bites. Like on the Inventor side, let's say that you don't have Vault, and you attended the seminar today or webinar, whatever you want to call this, and we appreciate you taking the time. But how can you take advantage of some of the automation? You can start off with Inventor and some of the iLogic, some of the drawing templates, some of the part files. Look at some of the things that you're doing, and reach out to us to find out how we can help you implement iLogic to help with some of those tasks that you do day in and day out. Anything that's redundant can be automated. And we start off as simple as iLogic automation there. Then if you have Vault Basic, even though Vault Basic doesn't have the PDF generation creation, we have some of the iLogic that you use in Inventor, and that'll help. That is quick, get you up and running quickly with some automation. Then by looking at Vault Workup or Vault Professional, now you can start getting that PDF, some of the more metadata, and then you start looking at the Coolorange, and then you can really start taking more advantage of some of the automation capabilities. But each one of them takes time, it takes a few steps, but the iLogic has been typically the first stage people will utilize for some of the automation.
Right. I completely agree. Anything that you feel is redundant, definitely reach out to us. We also offer complimentary workflow reviews in which you sit down with an engineer or someone like Jim, and we sit down, we look at your workflow and how to help it be more productive. So some of these, what he mentioned today, will definitely be applicable, or if not, any other tools that we could think of. We're happy to do that for 1 hour for free for any of our MicroCAD clients. Now, it looks like we do have another question coming in. So are you able to insert a customer's PDF into Vault? Say something that we didn't create or have access to part files.
Absolutely. So any file that can be stored on a computer can be added to Vault, and it can even be associated with a file. So something that you can do is if I were to add a file here, if I were to receive a PDF file, let's say if I go to Documents, and I got a PDF in here somewhere. Let's do this guy. So I just added it there. Then if I wanted to, let's say that this provided documentation to this guy. This little paperclip just lets me know that there's an attachment. Let's go to this file right here. And what I can do then is I can actually, how are you? Boy, how long has it been since I've done an attachment? Well, great question. We can actually attach the file once I can remember how to do that. So we can actually link this PDF with this. so that whenever anyone's looking at this file, they have reference and they can actually access it. Let's see. Oh, it's released. That's why. Silly. Let me change the state. The system only does what you tell it to do. Let's go to work in progress. Now the file can be actually edited. Okay, now we can actually go and actually add an attachment. Files. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Go back to this file here. This little guy right there, add attachments. At that point, I can actually attach that file and I can link it. And it's nice so that if that PDF file could be in any folder, it really doesn't matter where it is. I can take it, let's see, this guy right here, and I can move it over to this folder. So it might not be in the same folder, so it might not be clear or evident that if I look at this file, what does it use? Attachments. There it is. So any file that's brought in, it could be a PDF, TIFF, JPEG, doesn't matter. It can be brought into the system and it can be added to the file so you have full access. You don't have to worry about, let me look at this folder to see if there's any files that pertain to this file. That little paperclip lets me know that there's attachments, there's supporting documents, and I can see everything right there. It's just you can't change a file if it's released, it's locked. Because if I added an attachment, basically it's a bump of the rev. So yes, any document can be added to the system and any file can be attached to any other file.
That's great. And yeah, just as we had mentioned, anything if you feel that it's feeling a bit redundant and you're looking to implement some of the things that Jim discussed today, we do offer training. We offer custom training or group classes, either one. Be sure to reach out to your rep, but I'll be following up with everyone who attended today as well, just to check in to see what your thoughts are. But we're looking to make sure that everyone is as efficient as possible. That's really the goal, to optimize your productivity when it comes to software, and that's what we're here to do at MicroCAD. So thank you so much, Jim, for a wonderful webinar, and thank you to all our attendees and those who asked questions. We're looking forward to some more and be checking out our website. I know we have an Inventor user group coming up in December, so definitely be on the lookout for that as well. But without further ado, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you for your patience with the software glitches. That we got through it. And again, reach out to your sales rep, Carolina, if you have any questions or you want to see any more detail on any of the things that we showed you today.
Thank you, Jim. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.